I'm Sterling Cox, and I'm one member of three of a new company called swlivingspaces, and we're making living spaces out of shipping containers. I'm here with my partner and friend Travis.
I'm Travis Tench, also member of SW Living Spaces, co-founder, we could say.
Yes.
So how long has SW Living Spaces been a company now?
I do, and I do want to mention we have our third member, Farouk. No one knows how to pronounce his last name, and I've heard him say it before, and it doesn't look anything the way it's spelled, and it's Bosnian. And we're in Brooklyn right now, and he's back down in Florida. So we just want to make sure he gets a little airtime.
It sort of looks to me like it should be pronounced like vacuum pack or something
Yes,
like that. It's something close to that, but we'll let him.
And it's it's plural for some reason. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's Bosnian. And I'm sorry. The next question was?
How long have you guys been a company now?
I would say officially we applied for the LLC in February of 2014, so a year and a half, if that.
Great. So you guys have been hard at work building shipping container modules.
Sometimes
cabins.
Sometimes they're hard. Yeah, there's long periods of rest in between. But we've completed a prototype. It was to get the engineering down. We wanted to make sure that we had an actual physical model before we started to kind of gain as much exposure as possible. We wanted to get a prototype available to get work out all the kinks and the problems before we wanted to put anything on the market and start trying to make a name for ourselves.
Yeah, I think like Sharon was saying, just here in the beginning, we're just really working out the kinks and trying to take it slow and build this business and make sure that we're doing it right and doing and at the same time, like, getting a lot of feedback from people, getting as much feedback as possible to make sure that we're gearing our business toward what people really want and people are really looking for.
So the three of you are totally hands-on with everything.
Yes, yeah. We like to think that all of us are proficient, if not good, at everything, but experts at none of them. At least I'll speak for myself. I'd like to think that I can do everything somewhat competently, but definitely not an expert in any of it.
And that's fair enough. A lot of people learn by doing, and I admire you guys for taking that step into the business world like that, because it takes a lot of effort to get things going and to keep it going and to do what you're doing. And I'm glad that you're sharing your experience with us here, because I am no means an expert either in anything that I'm doing, and I learn best by doing and going out there making mistakes and messing stuff up and learning from those mistakes and trying to do better next time.
I have to ask, yeah, Travis has to pump me up every once in a while, and I have a tendency to get bogged down in anything, whether it's plumbing or building codes, and then Travis has to kind of talk me back down and say, well, just move forward. There's no real rule book for this. We have to. And he usually puts a few curse words in there. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But I think that's like the big secret of like the world as you like become an adult, as you realize like nobody really knows what they're doing with anything, or rather, like, often we'll dive into things without really knowing, and just with the confidence to know that, like, oh, I probably know how to figure it out because I figured out how to do other things. And I think that's kind of how we approach this. That's how I approach most anything that I do, is that I don't know exactly all the details, but I know, like, we have a compass rather than a roadmap. So we meander a little bit, we like mess things up, but that's part of it. That's like was it Edison went through like how many like 90 whatever different versions of the light bulb, and he said that he wouldn't have gotten to a working one had he not tried and failed that many times to, like, because of the working one, there's a little bit of every one of those failures. There's a little piece of that in the final working model. So Hopefully we won't go through 90-some
Yeah.
containers before we have the. I think we have a pretty good working model now, but yeah, it took us. We've screwed up a lot of things.
Yeah,
before.
well, it's funny. Though if the walls could talk of that thing, it's got so many holes in it.
It
Behind,
says stop cutting.
and then behind it is just there's such all this duct tape and just like all these other more holes, and it's a real mess. But if you
Lots of wood putty polyurethane. It's like nice shiny coat on the outside. Finally,
And if you for some reason you buy this prototype, anyone out there that's listening to this, that's not the prototype we're talking about now. That's another one.
So one of the reasons I asked you guys to be on is because you do have this sort of experience, and you have been able to cover so many of the things that people are asking about on the regular at Containerist.com. I get messages all the time, and I have a list here that I'd like to cover some of our things here. When it comes down to foundations for shipping containers, I know that you don't always need to put them on something. You can, but the option is there to just leave them on the floor if you intend to do that. Well, what's your experience with them? Have you done any like the Diamond Pier ones?
No, my only experience with the Diamond Pier system, which I think looks like a really interesting system, is just online research. Same with the pour form concrete pillars, and as I think I linked you an article where or at least I mentioned where they set in metal plates on the top to
Inside
weld
the sonotubes?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, there's another brand name, but I forget what it is. Anyway, I remember sending you a link. And then the ones the one that we mostly just put it on 2x6s. We've had it on concrete and in sand, and those seem to work fairly well. Pretty tightly packed sand. I like the idea of setting in the way they're on ships. There's 4 feet, there's 4 sockets, and then twist locks go in there, and then that's how they stack. That's how they are connected to the deck. And any future innovations with the shipping containers, I'd like to see everything twist locks. That's the way they are designed, and I think it's a really good system. And you can actually buy twist locks if you don't know a longshoreman that can steal you some from a pier. But I would like to use that system. That's the way they attach to the trucks. That's the way that they, like I said, attach to ships, trains, anything. And any foundation, I would use those so it can, at least with our models, they remain intermodal. They remain easily moved, and I think that's a huge advantage to shipping containers just in general. So I don't like the idea of a permanent one. And as I say, just that's the way it was designed, twist locks, and I would use that in any system. Even if I wasn't using pillars or concrete piers or anything like that, I would weld the sockets that the twist locks go to, and then go from there.
Yeah, I like the idea of being semi-permanent. Like if I decide I want to pick up and move someplace else, there should be an option that shouldn't have too many obstacles to it. Because one of the things that worries me about tiny homes and shipping container homes is that they could just disappear if somebody had the opportunity to oil the means, load up your house and just drive away with it, which is something that I don't think should be made that easy for them. I actually think people should.
That's funny. It's a Brooklyn guy coming in front.
Who stole my house?
Yeah.
But yeah, I've put a lot of thought into this. I feel like people should be embedding GPS trackers into these things because you never know.
It's not a bad idea.
People just roll up and steal motorcycles. I've heard of mobile homes just disappearing like that.
Well, something I've thought about doing is if you set it down, kind of the system I had is just welding a plate to one of the feet, and that'd be a real simple solution. I mean, provided you had access to a welder, and then just when it's time to go, you just grind it off.
Right.
But no one's getting through that without a grinder, and it'd be a deterrent for sure. So,
Yeah, I'd hate to hear that story. Eventually, somebody stole my home.
Yeah.
And I spent $30,000 on even one of these cabins that
Sure.
Yeah.
hidden in the woods, and some good old boy sees it and decides he wants to plop it on his land. There's not really much stopping him from doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you know, honestly, I hadn't thought of that, but
Well, like you said, being a Brooklyn guy, yeah, I can't tell you how many bikes I had stolen from me
Yeah.
since I was a kid. It's been a bunch. So, aside from the foundations, I was interested in zoning, which is something else that everybody seems to be asking about. The zoning issue seems to be very neither here nor there, and everywhere you go it seems to be different, and from
Yes.
county to county it can vary wildly in what they're willing to accept from you
Yes.
and what you're willing to do. Have you had any issues with the zoning in your area in Florida?
I've had a couple conversations with zoning officials or inspectors, and it's like you said, always varying information. We're just south of the Georgia border in Jacksonville, Florida, and I hear anything goes in Georgia. If you can't see it from the road, no one will ever say anything. We're in Duval County, which is Jacksonville. I find this rather interesting. It can be an auxiliary structure in your backyard, I think 5 feet from the property line, but it can't have a kitchen. But a kitchen is only defined as a stove. So you couldn't have a stove in there, or at least not when the inspector ever came by, if he ever came by, which would be contingent on a complaint from the neighbors. So if someone saw a big steel box that they didn't find attractive enough, then they could call, inspector would come and either
And you take out the stove.
yeah, you take out the stove, and then they would and then offer them some tea or something and say, why is that a big hole in the counter? And I say, well, don't worry about it. But they one thing though, zoning is always going to be an issue with this. Say this container home thing does take off, and you want it to, Travis wants it to, I want it to. Say it does take off. This will be a constant battle with anyone, and it might be an easily won battle, with the tiny home on wheels, kind of gray area kinds of things, or it might be one of those things where it's like this, the one container home over on Keep Street in Williamsburg, where it's a $500,000 container home. It's I don't know how many square feet, but I think it's less than 2,000. And I think it was just battling zoning. And then there's that one over on Monitor Street in Greenpoint, the one that we talked about.
2 Monitor.
Yeah, that and that looks like it's at a standstill. And
Yeah, I visited that property a couple of weeks ago, and it looks like they haven't done anything there in at least 6 months.
And I hope that if the owners of that house and that project are, if they hear this, I don't want to be offensive at all, because I'm sure it's a nightmare, but is it worth it?
Right.
And to have an interesting home, is it worth to go through all this red tape and this it just seems like a mess.
An expensive mess.
An expensive mess.
His
And
carrying costs, if there is a loan involved, could be pretty expensive.
yeah, and just imagine how long how long it would take to get through all this. And I don't know. This is probably something I shouldn't say, but the way this is honestly how I feel, that there's 3 ways to do it. There's the following all the rules and doing it all properly. There's kind of breaking the rules and learning how to circumvent it, and then there's the gray area. It's easier to apologize than ask for permission, kind of thing. Making friends with someone before going into the inspector's office, doing just, I don't know, I don't want to say not truthful things, but kind of stretching truths. And like I said, I think it's all going to be more this gray area. Mm-hmm. And I really truly believe in people doing the right thing. I don't feel as if someone's going to be bending all these rules and to make a meth lab or some sort of I don't know, something really awful and illegal. They're doing it because they want to cool home, and they
Right.
just can't go through all these different
it's all about-
processes.
I think it's all about intention. That people are like, yeah, I want to have a cool home. I want to have something affordable and like mobile and adaptable and there's there's a lot of hoops.
And yeah,
and it's sort of and like you said, it's still so fairly new, so there's not a lot of precedent for it, and it's
Yes.
it just makes it hard on people, and that they don't know what category to put it in necessarily, or how to how to make rules around it.
I think so. That's one step now, and I think that's always going to be, as like what we said, always going to be a problem. And I think what they're normally going to fall into, if someone's thinking about putting this on their property, I think it's always going to be an auxiliary structure. That's kind of what I've seen over and over, which is not the primary residence, of course, and it's. I think that's what these things are going to be called more and more as more and more hopefully pop up. And then the other thing that is coming more to the forefront, that's also this kind of like, this is the unglamorous side of container living. This is the red tape. This is the forms you have to fill out. Then this kind of is the loans to pay for one. I mean, it's kind of romantic and exciting to be cutting metal and welding and decorating and imagining these things on the back of trucks whizzing around and lakefront properties and surf shacks and all that. But the unglamorous reality side is these two things: is the zoning and then the lending, the money. But what we've talked about, this Total Tiny Home lending is actually, it's exciting because there's enough precedent, there's enough interest where there are loans that are popping up, money is available, these kinds of things. In other words, it makes sense to a banker to say, well, why would I give you this money for, well, it's for a small home, is it? But that's already on its way, this whole zoning thing, who knows.
Let's hope we can keep the bankers out of this.
Yeah.
It's something I'm hoping to see is affordable and, not being trapped under a mortgage for 30 years to just so you have a place to live.
No, I think if more companies could do financing, I think they call it secondary financing, something like that. I think I have the term wrong, but that I feel as if that's going to be a really good step in the right direction. We with SW Living Spaces, we're kind of in the process right now of a dozen things, and we're barely along on any of them. But just because it's so new and just we're learning how long this takes, but is finding out a system for self-financing. In other words, almost one-click financing. I mean, of course, it'll never be that easy, but I like the idea of being able to finance in-house and with a significant down payment. I mean, on the scale of things, it'll be a larger down payment than it would percentage-wise than a house, and probably a higher APR. But we're talking with less money to begin with, and then doing a 5 to 7 year mortgage. And I think that's going to keep things very affordable, especially if you were splitting the cost up amongst a group of people. I won't put numbers on that right now, though.
No, it's an interesting idea because if you can get a company to help people purchase and just circumvent the whole loan process and banking. It's a great idea, but it also I think it would cause enough ire to cause more trouble for itself.
Oh, could
because the bankers once they lose their piece of the pie, and that's when legislation becomes enacted and the lobbyists start appearing, and it's unfortunate, but that's how America seems to operate sometimes. When if you can't get paid, then you find ways to be an obstacle to rent it.
That's what, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is we deadhead so often in this business. In this 16 months that we've been doing this, we deadhead on so many different things. Deadheading, I mean, we reach a place where we say, well, I don't know what the next step is. I mean, everything from the very first window we cut and how we were trying to design our first window frame. It was a disaster. It took us one whole weekend, and I don't know, maybe 20 man hours. I don't know, that's exact. Probably 10 man hours to make one window frame before we realized
there was a better way.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. And I remember during that one weekend saying, well, this is I'm done with this. I can't, I can't do this any longer. I've bitten off too much more than I can chew. I'm going to sell this thing, and every single, and we've come a long way since then, but we're still at the very beginning, and these are going to, I just imagine all these things that we're talking about right now are going to be more of these deadheads, where it's going to say, it was a good run, this is it. We're not going to be able to get around this one. And but I think there'll always be a way, with that.
Where there's a will.
Exactly, and this goes with the attitude that Travis said something earlier, something poetic about a compass, not a roadmap, and persistence and all these other things that seem to work when you have a few beers.
Hey, that's where all my best ideas come from. After the beer's been flowing, next thing I know, I own Containerist.com.
Yeah.